Welcome back to Classic Tales Retold. Today, we're journeying into the shadowy heart of Puritan New England with Nathaniel Hawthorne's masterpiece, Young Goodman Brown. This story isn't just a spooky campfire tale, it's a deep dive into faith, hypocrisy, and the darkness that might just be hiding in plain sight. Are you ready to take a walk in the woods? Let's begin. Our story opens at sunset in Salem Village. Young Goodman Brown steps out of his home, but not before sharing a parting kiss with his wife, Faith. Her name, as you'll see, is no accident. She's the picture of innocence, with pink ribbons in her cap, and she pleads with him, her voice full of worry. "Dearest heart," she whispers, "put off your journey until sunrise." A lone woman is troubled with such dreams and such thoughts. She begs him to stay with her, just for this one night. But Goodman Brown is firm. "My love and my faith," he says, "of all nights in the year, this one night must I tarry away from thee." He assures her his journey is urgent, a quick trip there and back before sunrise. He teases her gently, "Dost thou doubt me already, and we but 3 months married?" Faith relents, offering a blessing, "Then God bless you, and may you find all well when you come back. Amen." He cries, telling her to say her prayers and go to bed early, promising no harm will come to her. As they part, Goodman Brown walks down the street. But as he's about to turn the corner, he glances back. He sees Faith, still watching him, her face looking sad despite her cheerful pink ribbons. A pang of guilt hits him. Poor little Faith. He thinks, "What a wretch am I to leave her on such an errand." He even wonders if she had a premonition, a dream that warned her about the work he's about to do. But he pushes the thought away, telling himself she's a blessed angel. He makes a solemn promise to himself. After this one night, he'll cling to her and follow her all the way to heaven. With this noble resolution for his future, he feels perfectly justified in hurrying toward his very evil purpose for the present. Now, picture the scene. The road he takes is dreary, swallowed by the gloomiest trees of the forest. The path is a narrow crack in the darkness, and the trees seem to close in right behind him. It's utterly lonely, but it's a peculiar kind of solitude. In a place like this, you never know who might be hiding behind the countless tree trunks or in the thick branches overhead. You might be walking alone, but you could be passing through a whole unseen crowd. There may be a devilish Indian behind every tree, Goodman Brown mutters to himself. He glances over his shoulder, adding, "What if the devil himself should be at my very elbow?" And just as he thinks it, he turns a bend in the road. Looking forward again, he sees him. There, sitting at the foot of an old tree, is the figure of a man in respectable clothes. As Goodman Brown approaches, the man stands up and begins to walk right beside him. "You are late, Goodman Brown," the stranger says. His voice is calm, matter of fact. "The clock of the Old South was striking as I came through Boston, and that is full 15 minutes agone." Goodman Brown's voice trembles a little as he replies, "Faith kept me back a while." The sudden appearance of his companion, though not entirely a surprise, has clearly rattled him. It's now deep dusk, and the forest is getting darker by the second. Looking closely, Goodman Brown sees the second traveler is about 50 years old, dressed simply, much like himself. There's even a striking resemblance between them, more in their expression than their features. You might mistake them for father and son. But despite his simple clothes, the older man has an air of worldly experience, someone who wouldn't be out of place at the governor's dinner table. The only truly remarkable thing about him is his staff. It's carved to look like a great black snake's, so lifelike it almost seems to twist and wriggle in his hand like a living serpent. Of course, Goodman Brown thinks it must just be a trick of the fading light. "Come, Goodman Brown," the man cries, This is a dull pace for the beginning of a journey. Take my staff, if you are so soon weary. But Goodman Brown stops dead in his tracks. Friend, he says, I've kept my promise by meeting you here. Now I'm going back where I came from. I'm having second thoughts about this whole business. The man with the serpent staff just smiles. Is that so? He replies. Let us walk on nevertheless. We'll reason as we go. If I don't convince you, you can turn back. We are but a little way in the forest yet. Too far, too far. Goodman Brown exclaims, already walking again without realizing it. He protests, my father never went into the woods on such an errand, nor his father before him. We have been a race of honest men and good Christians since the days of the martyrs. And shall I be the first of the name of Brown that ever took this path and kept? He trails off. Such company, you would say, the older man finishes for him. Well said, Goodman Brown. I've been well acquainted with your family. I helped your grandfather, the constable, when he whipped that Quaker woman through the streets of Salem. And it was me who brought your father a torch to set fire to an Indian village during King Philip's War. They were both good friends of mine. We had many pleasant walks on this very path. Goodman Brown is stunned. If what you say is true, he replies, I'm surprised they never spoke of it. But then again, I'm not surprised, since a rumor like that would have gotten them kicked out of New England. We are a people of prayer and good works, and we don't tolerate such wickedness. The traveler with the twisted staff just shrugs. Wickedness or not, he says, I have a very general acquaintance here. The deacons of many churches have drunk communion wine with me. The leaders of many towns make me their chairman. A majority of the government are firm supporters of my interests. The governor and I, too, but those are state secrets. Can this be so? Goodman Brown cries out, staring in amazement at his companion. He tries to argue, saying that the governor and the council have their own ways, and they are no role models for a simple farmer like him. But if I were to go on with you, he pleads, how could I ever look our good old minister in the eye again? His voice would make me tremble in church. At this, the elder traveler bursts into an uncontrollable fit of laughter. He shakes so hard his snake-like staff seems to wriggle along with him. Ha ha ha! He shouts. Go on, Goodman Brown, go on, but please, don't kill me with laughing. Nettled, Goodman Brown decides to end the matter once and for all. There is my wife, Faith, he says firmly. It would break her dear little heart, and I'd rather break my own. Well, if that's the case, the other man answers, then go on your way, Goodman Brown. I wouldn't want Faith to come to any harm. As he speaks, he points his staff down the path at a figure hobbling ahead. It's an old woman, and Goodman Brown recognizes her instantly. It's Goody Cloyce, a famously pious woman who taught him his catechism as a child, and was still one of his spiritual advisers. A marvel, truly, that Goody Cloyce should be so far in the wilderness, at nightfall. He says. He turns to his companion. If you don't mind, I'll take a shortcut through the woods until we've passed this good Christian woman. Since she doesn't know you, she might ask who I was with and where I was going. Be it so, says his fellow traveler. You take to the woods, and I'll keep the path. So Goodman Brown steps off the path into the trees, but he keeps a close eye on his companion. The man walks softly until he's just a staff's length behind the old woman. She's moving surprisingly fast for her age, mumbling what sounds like a prayer. Then, the traveler reaches out with his staff and touches her wrinkled neck with what looks like the serpent's tail. She recognizes the traveler as your worship and complains that her broomstick has been stolen by another so-called good woman of the village, preventing her from flying to the night's meeting. She even recites a witch's brew recipe, which the traveler finishes for her, mentioning the fat of a newborn babe. Goody Cloyce cackles, completely at ease with this demonic conversation. The traveler offers her his serpent-like staff, and in an instant, both she and the staff vanish. Brown is stunned. "That old woman taught me my catechism," he mutters, the foundation of his world beginning to crack. The traveler continues to walk with him, his words like poison seeming to sprout from Brown's own heart rather than from an outside voice. As they walk, the traveler plucks a maple branch, and the instant his fingers touch it, the fresh, dewy leaves wither and dry up. This is no ordinary man. Overwhelmed, Brown finally stops. He sits on a tree stump and declares he won't go a step farther. What if a wretched old woman does choose to go to the devil? He asks. Is that any reason why I should quit my dear faith and go after her? He's trying to cling to his own righteousness, to separate himself from the corruption he's just witnessed. The traveler, ever composed, simply tells him to rest and leaves the withered maple staff for him when he is ready to continue. Then he vanishes into the gloom. Alone, Brown congratulates himself. He feels virtuous, thinking of how clearly he can now face his minister and Deacon Goodman, his conscience clean. He imagines a peaceful sleep in the arms of his wife Faith. But his self-satisfied thoughts are cut short by the sound of hoofbeats and voices. Hidden in the trees, he listens. He can't see anyone, but he swears he recognizes the sober, grave tones of the village minister and Deacon Goodman. He strains to hear their conversation as they pass by invisibly. The deacon's voice says he'd rather miss an ordination dinner than tonight's meeting. He speaks of new converts joining their communion, including a goodly young woman. The minister urges him to hurry, saying, "Nothing can be done, you know, until I get on the ground." The holiest men in his life, the spiritual guides of his community, are on their way to the same evil gathering. The foundation of Brown's world doesn't just crack, it shatters. He grabs a tree for support, his heart sick. He looks to the sky, almost doubting that heaven exists. With heaven above and faith below, I will yet stand firm against the devil. He cries out, a last desperate attempt to hold on. But as he looks up, a black cloud rushes across the sky, blotting out the stars. And from this cloud, he hears a chorus of voices, the voices of his neighbors, both the holy and the unholy people he sees every day in Salem. Among the cacophony, he hears one voice, clearly a young woman's voice, full of sorrow and lament. It sounds like his wife, Faith. The unseen crowd seems to be urging her onward. Faith! Goodman Brown screams in pure agony. The forest echoes mock him, crying Faith, Faith, as if joining a universal, desperate search. He listens, breathless, for a response. He hears a scream, quickly swallowed by a roar of laughter as the cloud sweeps away, leaving a clear, silent sky. But something flutters down from the air and catches on a tree branch. He snatches it. It's a pink ribbon, the very symbol of his wife's innocence. My faith is gone, he cries. In that moment, his entire worldview collapses. There is no good on earth, and sin is but a name. Come, devil, for to thee is this world given. All hope is extinguished. He is no longer fighting the darkness, he is embracing it. Maddened by despair, laughing wildly, Brown grabs the staff the traveler left and plunges headfirst into the wilderness. Through the haunted forest, Goodman Brown flew, a figure more frightful than any ghoul. He tore through the black pines, brandishing his staff, shouting horrid blasphemies, and laughing a maniacal laugh that the echoes threw back at him like a chorus of demons. The devil himself is less hideous than a man consumed by his own inner fiend. He sped on, driven by this inner tempest, until he saw a red light glowing ahead, like a bonfire of felled trees at midnight. The wind died down, and in the sudden lull, he heard a sound ahead, swelling solemnly from a distance, sung by many voices. He knew the tune. It was one he'd heard 100 times in the village meeting-house. But as the verse faded, the chorus that followed was not human. It was the howl of the wilderness itself, a harmony of all the benighted sounds of the forest. Goodman Brown cried out, but his own voice was swallowed by the greater cry of the desert. He crept forward until the light glared in his eyes. In a clearing, hemmed in by a dark wall of trees, stood a rock that looked like a crude altar or pulpit. Around it, 4 great pines burned like giant candles, their tops aflame but their trunks untouched. The foliage on the rock itself was a roaring blaze, lighting up the scene in flickering waves. In the shifting light and shadow, a congregation appeared and disappeared. A grave and dark-clad company. He muttered, "And they were?" He saw faces he knew, faces from the governor's council, faces that looked down from the holiest pulpits in the land every Sabbath. Some said the governor's wife was there. Certainly, there were high-born dames, respected wives, and widows of good repute. Fair young girls trembled, hoping their mothers wouldn't spot them. Goodman Brown was sure he recognized a score of the most pious church members from Salem village. Old Deacon Goodman was there, and so was his own revered pastor. But mingling with these pious, reputable people were men of dissolute lives, women of ill fame, and wretches suspected of the most horrid crimes. Strangely, the good did not shrink from the wicked, nor did the sinners seem abashed by the saints. Scattered among them were also the Indian priests, whose incantations were known to be more hideous than any English witchcraft. But where is faith? Thought Goodman Brown, and a sliver of hope made him tremble. Just then, another verse of the hymn arose, slow and mournful. The tune was one the pious loved, but the words described every sin imaginable, and hinted at far darker things. The lore of fiends is unfathomable to mortals. Verse after verse they sang, the roar of the wilderness swelling between each one like a mighty organ. With the final, dreadful peal, it seemed as if the wind, the rivers, the howling beasts, and every voice of the wild woods joined with the voices of guilty men in tribute to the Prince of all. The 4 burning pines flared higher, revealing monstrous shapes in the smoke above the unholy assembly. The fire on the rock shot up, forming a glowing arch. And beneath it, a figure appeared. It bore a striking resemblance, in both dress and manner, to a grave minister of the New England churches. "Bring forth the converts," cried a voice that echoed through the forest. At the command, Goodman Brown stepped out from the trees. He felt a loathsome brotherhood with this congregation, a sympathy of all the wickedness in his own heart. He thought he saw the shape of his dead father beckoning him forward from a wreath of smoke, while a woman with features of despair was at his mother, warned him back, but he couldn't retreat. The minister and old Deacon Goodman seized his arms and led him to the blazing rock. From the other side came a slender, veiled female, led by Goody Cloyce, the pious catechism teacher, and Martha Carrier, a woman rumored to have been promised the title of Queen of Hell. And there they stood, the 2 new converts, beneath the canopy of fire. "Welcome, my children," said the dark figure, "to the communion of your race. You have found, so young, your true nature and destiny. My children, look behind you." They turned. In a flash of flame, the entire congregation of fiend worshippers was revealed, a dark smile of welcome on every face. "There," the sable form continued, "are all whom you have reverenced. You thought them holier than yourselves. You shrank from your own sin, comparing it to their righteous lives. Yet here they all are, in my assembly. Tonight, you will know their secret deeds. How gray-bearded elders whisper wan words to the young maids of their houses. How many a wife, eager to be a widow, has given her husband a final drink at bedtime. How young men have hurried to inherit their father's wealth. And how fair damsels have dug little graves in the garden for their infants. By the sympathy of your human hearts for sin, you will sense crime everywhere in the church, the bedchamber, the street. You will see the whole earth as one great stain of guilt. More than this, you will penetrate the deep mystery of sin in every heart. And now, my children, look upon each other. They did. And by the hell-kindled light, the wretched man saw his faith, and the wife saw her husband, trembling before that unhallowed altar. Lo, there you stand, the figure said, his tone deep and solemn, almost sad. Depending on each other's hearts, you hoped that virtue was not just a dream. Now you are undeceived. Evil is the nature of mankind. Evil must be your only happiness. Welcome again, my children, to the communion of your race. Welcome. The fiend worshippers cried in a chorus of despair and triumph. In a hollow in the rock was a basin. Was it filled with water, reddened by the lurid light? Or was it blood? Or liquid flame? The shape of evil dipped his hand, preparing to lay the mark of baptism upon their foreheads, to make them partakers in the mystery of sin. Goodman Brown cast one look at his pale wife, and Faith looked at him. Faith, Faith, he cried, look up to heaven, and resist the wicked one. He never knew if she obeyed. The moment he spoke, he found himself alone in the calm, solitary night. The wind died away. He staggered against the rock and felt its cold, damp surface. A twig that had been on fire sprinkled his cheek with the coldest dew. The next morning, Goodman Brown walked slowly into Salem village, a bewildered man. The old minister passed him, offering a blessing. Brown shrank away as if from a curse. He heard Deacon Gookin at prayer and wondered, what god does that wizard pray to? He saw Goody Coyce teaching a little girl and snatched the child away as if from the devil himself. Turning a corner, he saw Faith, her pink ribbons in her hair, her face lighting up with joy at the sight of him. She skipped toward him to kiss him, but he looked sternly and sadly into her face and passed on without a word. Had it all been a dream? A wild dream of a witch meeting in the forest? Perhaps, but it was a dream of evil omen for young Goodman Brown. He became a stern, sad, distrustful man. On the Sabbath, he couldn't listen to the holy psalms because the anthem of sin roared in his ears. When the minister preached of heaven and hell, Brown turned pale, fearing the church roof would collapse on the blasphemer. He shrank from his wife Faith at night and scowled through family prayers. And when he died an old man and was carried to his grave followed by Faith and his children and grandchildren, they carved no hopeful verse upon his tombstone. For his dying hour was gloom. What do you think happened in that forest? Was it a dream, or did Goodman Brown truly see the dark heart of his community? This story forces us to question the nature of good and evil, and whether we can ever truly know what lies in the hearts of those around us, or even in our own. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into classic literature, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into stories that make you think. See you next time.